everybody, and welcome to the Maurice Brown Show. Welcome to Soulmates and Partners taking on global issues with faith and compassion. You got to love it. Who are uncovering the effect of Facebook, a platform we're on right now, and Instagram on people's mental health. Please, with no further ado, please welcome global game changers and kingdom led disruptors, Ambassador Dr. Melody Garcia and Ambassador Dr. Mark Anthony King. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Hello, guys. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Maurice. Great to see you again.
Hello, brother. And hello to all your guests.
Yes. Hello.
Yes. Love to have you guys on the show. The last time we spoke was at the International Christian Film Festival in Orlando, Florida. And, we chopped it up down there. We had a chance to talk, but I wanted to get you guys on this platform so we could really dive into what it is you guys do much more specifically, and just a better platform of just having a really good super duper convo. So I want to thank you guys for being on the show. And we were there at I think it was like this past May, which really wasn't that long ago. And here we are back together again. Great to see you guys. What kind of effect, because I mentioned, the platform that we're on, but what kind of effect do you think, and I'll direct this question to you, Melody, what kind of effect do you think social media is having on America and particularly teenage girls?
Great question, Maurice, and what a way to start the show. It's having majority a negative effect, right? We actually did an interview with Canada several months ago that had pretty much the same question: is what are the effects of social media in today's youth?
Yeah.
Now, with the girls, I'm just going to go there just because we talk about disruptive messages. A movie was just released, the Barbie movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It is not the same Barbie doll that I grew up with as a child, where the message, as Mark had stated, you can be anything. Now it is literally about a whole different disruptive negative message, in my opinion, of being materialistic, that life is plastic and it's fantastic. Just listen to that messaging, where Ken is now just nothing but a sex object. And we saw we were coming out from the movie Sound of Freedom. And the circus show that we came out from, meaning the other theater that was showing this movie, was just a sight to behold. And you take a look, we talk about mental health situation right now.
Yeah.
You have men dressing as women. You have children being brought onto a show that is no longer appropriate for children, right? And then we're looking at this idolization of an Instagram life, Maurice, where people are purchasing followers, and young impressionable girls are going, that is what my body should look like, not knowing that it's all been modified. I need to get different enhancements. I need to get those puckered lips. I need to be seductive. But this is the effects of social media that ends viral. So it's negative, in my opinion. It is far and few where there's a lot of positive messages of this is real, REAL, versus the real REEL. Because there's an influencer market, right? They call influencer that really targets certain demographics, especially young girls, young ladies, that perpetuates just product at the end of the day.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned Sound of Freedom, and, that is a faith-based film that actually led the box office for the first couple of weeks. And it's still doing quite well. And then
140, 150 million.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly and honestly, it says a lot. I mean, as you speak about Barbie, which is like that movie has become an absolute craze. In fact, I forget the actress's name. Isla, I forget her name, but she's an African-American actress, but that is like the largest grossing film for a woman in history.
Yes.
It's got a lot of complicated messages in that film. It's extremely materialistic, and no, it is not the Barbie that we remember growing up as kids, particularly myself. I mean, I outpoint you guys by at least 10, 15 years. So this thing Barbie, and I'm kind of looking up and I'm going, I don't remember Barbie being this exciting. Anyway, that being said, uh, so that great points that you made there, Melody, because it has become this massive craze, and it is hugely materialistic stuff. Um, and we live at a time where Americans have become, and I'll direct this to you, Mark, where Americans have become very, very sensitive, which has led to cancel culture. I remember, again, going back to my youth, I mean, my gosh, there wasn't a whole lot of sympathy for young people when you were given directives by mom, dad, coaches, teachers, administrators, you name it. It's like, you better get moving.
Yeah.
And period. And that was that. And guess what? Nobody got sick. There was no mental trauma from the fact that you had to cut the grass or rake the yard, or you had to do chores or throw the newspaper out and get, a little. There was no mental trauma from that. We came out just fine from it. And so here we are, 2023. I'm kind of piggybacking on what you said about the social media factor, Melody, that you accurately pointed out. And it's all that stuff has led to, Mark, cancel culture. What is the seed, in your opinion, that started this phenomenon, and what is its goal?
Boy, I don't know what started the phenomena or the movement.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate on something that you said, because again, playing advocate here.
Yeah.
I grew up in a time where things were different. I'm a 90s baby.
Okay.
So when I grew up, whatever mom and dad said goes.
Yep.
When I grew up, it was not uncommon for your parent to tell you, visiting a friend, sit on this couch and don't say anything until I'm done.
Yeah.
And you found ways to entertain yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have iPads. We didn't have any of this stuff. We were able to self-soothe. There was a certain degree of independence that we had.
Yes.
But things took a massive, massive shift. I think to say that 90s babies and 80s babies as compared to today, that we're perfectly fine and everything's hunky-dory, I don't think that's an apt statement. I mean, you look at mental health.
Yeah.
As men, about 85 to 80% of the violent crime that's perpetuated in the world is done by men. And it's not just young men. It's not just, 13 and 12-year-olds today. It's people your age, men your age. It's men my age, and in between. So I think that there's an underlying epidemic. I do think things have gotten progressively more. I'm trying to be politically correct here, but as human beings, we have a tendency of overcorrecting.
Okay.
And we do that in every aspect of life. So in relationship, if you started out being very giving and very kind, very loving, very nurturing, and then somebody's unfaithful to you, you don't think that it's just a consequence of you're with the wrong person, somebody who didn't appreciate you. We overcorrect. We become domineering. We close off. We start to view women or men in a different capacity. We start to become judgmental. We become the polar opposite, the antithesis of what we once were.
Yes.
Ultimately, I think there's a nefarious agenda that is perpetuating something under the guise of altruism.
Okay.
And I think we're being told it's a good thing because it's good to be sensitive. It is good to be sensitive. It's good to be empathetic and compassionate. Melody and I wouldn't do the things that we do if we weren't empathetic and compassionate. My heart, as well as hers, bleeds for humanity and the things that we've seen. But at the same time, you have to be willing to draw a line and take a stand and say, how much of what you're doing that you think and that you say is for the good of humanity is ultimately breaking us, is ultimately breaking the youth, is breaking society. How many of the rules that you have that are in place of parents needing to abide by their children's gender pronouns or else child protective services get called?
Yeah.
There is a mental health epidemic that is being perpetuated I'm not saying it's by design. I'm also not saying it's not by design. Wink,
Right.
wink. By those
Right.
powers that be. I think ultimately it's to suppress, it's to control, and it's to drive a narrative that is very ungodly. And we, as men and as women of influence, have a physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, celestial obligation to fight it at every single turn and be
Amen.
leaders and be pioneers so that kids have something to look up to. You know, there's a statistic that was done between American children and Chinese children. Chinese children wanted to be engineers, wanted to be doctors. American children wanted to be influencers and YouTubers. That's
Well,
by design.
well, and I like what you said, because I think that to kind of piggyback on an earlier point you made about the mental damage that was done for when kids are growing up. I mean, I went back to when I grew up. I grew up in the 70s, and like I said, you had to go and whatever your parents said. There was just no consideration of saying no or showing any type of disgust or disagreement or whatever. You got to
It
do it.
wasn't a democracy, it was a dictatorship.
It was a flat out dictatorship, and I said that
The
I
parents
did.
are
We didn't suffer any mental trauma, like it didn't kill anybody. At the end of the day, I do think there are snippets of somewhat of a psychological effect in that sense. It's like we found ways to self-medicate, to self-soothe, or however to get through it all. And again, but I think the intentions were great back then. There was a lack of a lot of compassion, so that they didn't marry each other, but it was close enough to where you need to be. And then it just slowly began to deteriorate from that point. And here we are with this cancel culture thing, which is brought on by the devil, quite frankly and honestly.
Mhm.
Yes.
Sensitive society, and nobody can be told the truth. The truth can be evil. The truth can be wrong. The truth can be unnecessary. Why did you have to say
3
that?
hours there today.
But
Yeah.
think about why.
Yeah.
What does the truth represent? The Bible says the truth is going to set you what?
Free.
Set you free. So if we keep perpetuating the lie and keep people from the truth, are we slaves or are we free?
We are slaves.
Yeah, and I want to add to this, Maurice, is what we tolerate becomes the standard. So generationally, those standards have gotten lower and lower and lower, that we're now currently facing the modern day Sodom and Gomorrah.
Mhm.
Think about it.
Oh no, we're absolutely on the cusp of that. If you look, I said to someone recently, I said, if you looked around at the way that people dress in society today, particularly women, as you accurately alluded to when you were speaking of the Barbie film and its effect on young girls, we would not. We would go, that could never happen. 25 years ago, if you showed someone a snippet of 2023 and the way women step out of the house, you go, that's impossible.
Mhm.
You'd be mortified if you showed someone that 25, 30 years ago. But no, that's just, it's inconceivable in the mind of someone from that era. Why? Because it's lewd. It's
Yeah.
inappropriate. You can't go outside like that. And yet it's done on a regular basis as if it's normal. And so this is where we've arrived. Back to your point about Sodom and Gomorrah, we're on the cusp of it. And the things that we're allowing right now are leading directly to it. The policies that are being passed in our government, allowing certain types of behavior, approving of certain types of behavior, which lend itself to Sodom and Gomorrah. All you got to do is go to the Bible and read Sodom and Gomorrah, and then compare it to 2023 and where we're heading. And we know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. God is a gracious, merciful, patient God, but he does have a limit. And that clock's running on America right now. And so to your point very well made. And so, Melody, I flip it back over to you. I also want to talk about discrimination,
Yeah.
which is a very prevalent issue that seems to never go away.
Mhm.
and I as an African American, I know that you are a Pacific Islander,
Asian
uh,
American.
Asian American, and I just you look at all the different things that we deal with, you would think that that would actually get better in America. How would you measure the issue in America in 2023? Worse than ever before, or perhaps better than in the recent past?
So this is an interesting question, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because do we really have true measurement of worse than ever before? Because if we take a look at modern day technology, we're recording more than ever before,
yeah,
right? So there's because of this world that we're so connected by different social media platforms, Instagram, let's say police beating a black
yeah,
man that died, right?
yeah,
Asian hate crime.
Right, Asian hate crime, but you've got camera ready streaming this live instantaneously before news can even get there.
yeah,
We are
It's a
micro
world star.
news, right? We are now micro reporters by our own right. Is it really showcasing what has been there all this time, or has it gotten more traction because of instant information?
yes,
But has discrimination gone away? Absolutely not, right? And I go back to the last statement that I had mentioned. What we tolerate becomes the standard. In the past, when you saw someone being beaten, we had cops. We had a group of heroes that would step in, I would say, or intercede and intervene. But now, because of whatever biases, fears, control that is out there, whether it's real or perceived, we're almost paralyzed as a nation to step in. When someone's
yeah,
screaming, I can't breathe, and all you have are cameras pointed at you as you take that last suffocating breath, the question I have is, are we allowing discrimination to continue? Because instead of interceding or taking action, we're perpetuating by showing, hey, this reel can go viral. It had to take, in your case, a man's death to have countries around the world talk about Black Lives, matter.
yeah,
Then you have Asian hate crimes that continues to just pop up, and it's being reported not by mainstream media, it's by individuals that are now pointing their own cameras, their own phones to this. So
yes,
it's really hard to say, has discrimination gotten worse or better? Just because if I was to look at the fast reporting, now things are being reported. What if this existed 20 years ago, but we didn't have the technology to do so? Because
exactly.
right, and if we take a look at some of these realistic movies that has been said, you're also looking at criminals or people, I should just say, that's been charged, that you find out later because of modern day technology has been imprisoned wrongly because they did not commit the crime, right?
Correct,
So
correct.
when it's a hard question to really respond to, given that the biases that are present. Is I can be a reporter and point a camera right at Mark
Mhm.
while something is happening, where in the past 10 years ago I'm going to have to call the cops, who will then call the news stations to come in to the situation.
Yeah, and
Well,
to
yeah,
Melody's point, how much of what we're currently privy to isn't brand new? It's
Mhm.
just a consequence of what's already been there being exposed. I'm gonna go there because
Go
that's
there.
what we do. Uh, the Dalai Lama was recently shown asking a child to suck his tongue.
Mhm.
Now, my question is, this man who is glorified and deified as the reincarnation of the Buddha, pretty much,
Mhm.
who is heralded as a deity, as a god, who is worshipped throughout the entire world. How many of those public slip ups throughout his time as a deity have happened in private? Because we know that what we do in private inevitably becomes public matter.
yes. Well, that's a great question, Mark. You can only imagine. You can only imagine, and I think that you look at the Catholic Church and what they've done to young boys and young girls, for that matter, as far as I'm concerned, over who knows how long,
Mhm.
and it's kind of ignored by the general consensus of those that adhere to the faith of Catholicism. It's going on. Everybody knows it's going on. The popes, all of you, all of the popes on one. There's a film out there that Michael Keaton did. I wish I could think of the name of it, but he addressed this subject straight on, and he documented in, I think it was in Boston, where the Catholic schools and churches in an area where there are a number of priests that had actually been caught, or it had been found out they were conducting these inappropriate relations with young boys, but yet remained on the register, or they just moved them to a different parish or what have you, but they were never extricated from the priesthood. And it was, I wish I could think of the name of that. That was a great film. But to your point about the Dalai Lama and lots of other so-called great men, and I do mean so-called, they're guilty of this.
They are.
And society turns a blind eye to it.
And I do want to preface this by saying I am in no way demonizing our Buddhist brothers and sisters, nor our Catholic brothers and sisters. I am merely highlighting the fact that we have a moral and ethical obligation to understand and to recognize who we are electing and who is in a position of leadership representing us. And if they don't represent our interests, and if they are not an accurate embodiment of what it is that is right and just and correct, we need to get them out of that position. Otherwise, they perpetuate a culture of toxicity that we become complicit to in our silence.
Yes.
And I just want to add one thing that's critical, Maurice, because when you talk about discrimination over time, obviously there's different levels of discrimination, right? Different categories. But I'm going to point something that is factual here. Human trafficking was not an overnight situation. Human trafficking with 40 million victims globally at $152 billion industry yearly should answer the question on how evil has been perpetuated over time, except that we have more knowledge base now and more attention just because of technology, right? So when you look at discrimination at hand, when you look at the very thing that Mark has stated about the Dalai Lama, it's shocking to people that are coming into knowledge now because of information share, but it's been existing long over time.
And think about who we systematically discriminate against, the powers that be. We discriminate against the victims. We turn the victims into pariahs and we silence them.
You know, it's really interesting. You know, I think as much as things change, they remain the same, and it hasn't gone anywhere. In fact, it's gotten worse, and it's actually under a veil of darkness. But a lot of times, but the reality is, if we adhere to what the Bible said, there would be no discrimination. If men who represent the Bible, who speak for Christ, literally executed and in a position of leadership, executed what the Bible said, there wouldn't be any discrimination. It wouldn't be allowed to exist. And yet it has run out of control since the beginning of the birth of this nation. It's never been addressed. It's been right there front and center, the Bible wide open. It's in the constitutions of the states, the Declaration of Independence, and yet it ran wild. Anyway,
we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. What people don't understand is that there is an asterisk after that statement.
That's right. That's absolutely right, Mark. And I believe it says that slaves / black men are 3/4 of a man. And so you've got the Bible wide open now in front of you. Supposedly, I'm being somewhat facetious, but it's wide open in front of you. I don't see. I've checked. Wait a minute. No, it's not in there. So I don't understand the misrepresentation of God's word, but that's a clear infraction, and it has been executed, and it's so, and you know, God's going to come back and straighten all of this out. The clock is running. Why is the clock running? Because you have an opportunity to turn from your sin. Great answer, Mark and Melody. I want to go to the situation of AI, artificial intelligence, because I saw a sermon done by Miles McPherson of the Rock Church in San Diego, California, and he talked about the fact that because we're leading the society's going to AI, and it's scary to think about what could happen down that road. But during a conversation an individual had with a female AI, and this guy said, "Oh, you can do anything. You're amazing. What is it that you can't do? You can do everything." And the female AI image corrected the man. This is amazing. She said, "Yeah, but there's something you can do I'll never be able to do, and I'll never have." And he said, "What is that?" She said, "A soul." Utterly amazing. A human being put in its place, trying to help the human being to understand you're better than me.
I'm just still stuck on I say this a little tongue in cheek, but on the humor that even artificial women like correcting men.
Because that's why we were created last. Last word, last position.
Yes, I love it. Well, so on a more serious note, let me ask you, Mark, how dangerous do you think AI, artificial intelligence, is to our society?
Now, do you want me to say this as somebody who's seen the movie Terminator 2 or as Mission Impossible, the newest Mission Impossible? Maurice, I don't profess to speak on things that I don't have a vast, extensive knowledge base and history on. It's a practice that I've implemented for quite some time.
Okay.
Because I used to speak on everything that I had no concept about, no clue about.
Okay.
So I will say this. To a degree, I'm a fan of archaic artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Very archaic. Things that can cover our own oversights. I'm a fan of. But I think ultimately the thing that AI is slowly becoming, there was no other option. I mean, find me a person that has more than 3 phone numbers memorized. Today.
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely.
Find me a person that today, to do basic arithmetic, or fractions or division and subtraction with more than 2 numbers, that can do that on a sheet of paper and not have to use a calculator. We've outsourced so much of our ability to reason and to think and even to remember, right? So Melody has experienced this with me very many times when I'm trying to recall something and she's going to grab Google and I'll say, no, don't tell me. I want to pull it out of my own mind. I don't want to keep, outsourcing my brain to this thing. But ultimately, when you outsource your ability to reason, to think, to create, to innovate, to solve problems strategically, you're going to give way to something that takes over the human brain. I mean, look at what happened the second we formed bonds with wolves and created dogs. Our brains got a little bit smaller, as did wolves' brains get smaller, right? Because the parts of our brain so we were outsourcing certain things to wolves and to dogs, and wolves began outsourcing certain things to us. And those parts of our brain got proportionately smaller. This is scientific.
Okay.
So what's going to happen when we outsource everything to a phone or AI?
Well, it's happening now, right, with jobs being replaced by AI. There's a McDonald's in Texas that's 100% robotic with no humans running that. You have medical surgeons' jobs being taken over by AI.
Graphic designers, writers, copywriters, editors.
Right, Chat GPT, right? Let's go there, Chat GPT. Wonderful technology, but then you take a look at the jobs it's eliminating because of its precision, speed, productivity, profitability costs. But then, you take a look at the medical, like the surgery that we're talking about. When you have robots performing at 100% accuracy over human exhaustion,
or even that can diagnose significantly faster and significantly more accurately.
But then the dangers is that there was also some reports, Maurice, that AI to AI started developing their own language that the programmers didn't even program, so they had to shut it down.
How about that?
Right? How about that? And if we get, do you remember the Y2K fear?
I remember that for sure.
Everybody was taking out money.
Tell them for the younger audience.
You tell them.
So for the younger audience here, during the Y2K, the year 2000, we were terrified that every single computer was going to turn into this robot.
The planes were going to
fall. That planes were going to start falling from the sky. That the world was going to collapse. It was a legitimate fear. They even had shirts that said, "I survived Y2K."
Yes. Well, I think to kind of look at AI and a lot of technological innovations that we have been on the receiving end of over the years, at its core, it's a good thing at its core.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll use a word from the Bible in regards to money, and God said, "Money in the hands of a fool is soon departed." So what you're having is a situation where you take something good, and then man's mind immediately goes to greed. And the faster I do this, the more money I get, yada, 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 on down the line. It's all about creating revenue for their own greed. And so then you have a distorted situation, something that God gives the ability to create these things. It's a great thing, but there, for lack of a better way to put it, there are too many fools in charge. And so you get what you get out of that. Responsible, God-fearing men at the helm of everything produces nothing but good things. There's a lack of God-fearing men in leadership positions around the world. And of course, that comes into to play the battle between good and evil. God tells us what's going to happen in the Bible. And so you look at AI, I'm just using that as an example, and it can become very, very dangerous down the road. To your accurate statements about the phone, we can't remember 3 phone numbers. We can't remember how to get to the 7-Eleven without a GPS.
I used to know when I was a kid. I used to know everybody's phone number.
Right.
Everybody that I knew their phone number.
Yeah. And my gosh, just think what happens when something goes down and you don't have that phone to rely on. Think of what happens if you lose your phone and you have to get home. You don't know how to get home. You don't even know how to get to your job without your GPS. Some people rely on it so much. And technologically, technology can be a bad thing if it's not used appropriately. And I think we are playing with some fire with this AI right now, because I just don't think we're using it appropriately. I mean, when you say that the program starts developing its own language, it's like, they're trying to figure out how to destroy mankind if you give it enough ability and juice to do so. So that being said, misinformation, misrepresentation, and fake influencers. Melody, can you expound on these topics and enlighten our audience?
Absolutely. We're gonna have
Elijah, bring out Elijah. I'm just gonna lay back and listen.
Esther, look, we now live in a world. Everybody have seen this blue check marks.
Yeah.
Because the reasoning is we have to validate that is who we are. But prior to that, it costs a pretty penny to get those blue check marks of 10,000, 15,000. We're here a ridiculous amount. And then you have someone like Mark Zuckerberg, evening the playing ground, as we to speak, to now offer a subscription of $12 a month. People are buying. We live in a society. So now everybody has a blue check mark. So one of our mentors literally said, "Isn't it ridiculous? We have to now validate that this is who we are. I have to get a blue check mark to say Melody is Melody, Mark is Mark." We didn't prescribe to the whole blue check mark thing. Because it's just silly. It is literally silly nowadays, right? So misinformation, misrepresentation, and fake influencers. We take a look at Instagram. I can easily tell who's got fake followers. Yeah. It's easy, right? All you have to do is take a look at the name. If there's numbers behind it, or if you just look into the follower's Instagram account and it says 0 posts, you have people that are claiming to have. I can do a fake profile today on Facebook and say I attended all these Ivy League universities. No one's doing research on me. I'm an eloquent deliverer, right? But
Yeah.
when you look at it, it's very interesting because the numbers of people that are supposed to engage is almost non-existent. This tells me that all your validations, all your social posts are probably stock photos, made up information. Because if you're that engaged in society, in your life or whatnot, or even wrong messaging, how are people not engaging? Why? Well, most people can also tell what I can tell. So when you look at misinformation, I can say something that brands a product as an influencer. Let's take a look at modern day celebrities. If I say what is evil is good, and you happen to have 50 million followers, 50 million followers are now easily influenced that, oh my goodness, the person I'm fangirling or fanboying over says this is good, then it must be good.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
so their influence,
Their God.
yeah, their God, let's just the modern day gods are literally misrepresentations of when we take a look, you brought the Bible of thou shalt not have any other gods before me.
As the first commandment, ask yourself why. Out of all the things God could have said first, why is that?
So we live in a way that those three things you just said. I came across a video reel yesterday, Maurice, that this person owns a private jet that doesn't really go anywhere. It's just a stock jet. But the number of influencers that hires him to take photo ops inside the jet, pretending they're on their way to Dubai, pretending they're on their way to this very schwanky party, he's making a killing. Right? Obviously, he's saying he can't share who those influencers are, but that is what they're perpetuating in social media.
So they're not really doing big things in the world?
No, and it's just a point of a camera. And again, strategically, like in the industry that we are in, coaching and consulting, the strategically posed, I'm next to a very expensive car that I don't own or rented, right? Or for the ladies with the well manicured hands on the steering wheel of the car, probably they don't own or slaving to pay off at this point.
Yeah.
Right? It's all about validation. It's all about ego. And we've already heard over and over again, ego, the word ego is edging God out.
Yes. Yes. And
Right?
yes. And that's the whole point of the cancel culture and the way society is going. AI, all that stuff is about eliminating God from the equation.
And can I add this, Maurice? True influence is equal to true impact.
Yes.
Right? If you don't have an impact, you're not an influencer. You're just a social media poser at this point. If you're not engaged in taking actions, it's nothing. You're just part of the unfortunate, the dumbing down of society at the end of the day, because you think that is what an influencer is. Just like saying, oh, you're inspirational, which Mark knows what's my favorite line when you say you're inspirational.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. How many of these gurus do you see recycling the same regurgitated, contrived content where literally the three of us could go to a Chinese restaurant, have a beautiful meal, ask them for 50 fortune cookies. We crack each one open. We lay them out in front of us, transcribe it, and you've got a modern day bestseller on motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
You get a lot of positive commentary from the fortune cookies. It's a cookie cutter, pardoning the pun, form of encouragement. But let me just say this, because you said EGO, edging God out, and I'll pose this question to you, Mark. What is the difference between religion and faith?
I am really glad that you brought that up. This is something we talk about pretty often. There's a multitude of different religions in the world. Even within our own religion, Christianity, you'd be hard pressed to find a Seventh-day Adventist, a Jehovah's Witness, a Baptist, an Episcopalian, a Lutheran, an Evangelist, and everything in between to agree on absolutely everything, which I think is ridiculous because we all believe in Yahweh. We believe in Christ being our Lord and Savior.
Mm-hmm.
We read the same book. Yet,
Yes.
yet why are we so divided? Right?
Yeah.
And we're divided amongst every other religion as well. We had the privilege and the honor of addressing over 100 world leaders, speaking at this event that was sanctioned by the what was it, the Indian Department of
Affairs,
of Foreign Affairs, also greenlit by the United Nations, and we addressed this topic amongst others, and that is, for some reason, God has become this. So just to set the precedent, religion is divisive, blanket statement.
Yeah.
But God has become this polarizing figure in society. God has become a taboo topic. And that's something that I don't understand, because irrespective of your faith, even if you're an atheist and you say you don't believe in God, to you I say, what year is it? And the intelligent people will chuckle, and the people that don't get it won't. So I can expand upon that. It's 2023. The entire world, every culture, every nation, every people, every different religion has unanimously agreed on one thing. That is that it is the year 2023.
Yes.
What are we measuring that by? What is that metric representing? Christ, 2023, AD, Anno Domini.
Yes.
Is like the year of our Lord.
Absolutely.
The year of Jesus Christ. So whether you want to believe it or not, or accept it or not, you're living your life. Humanity defines time from before we were even here. If you're a creationist, or if you're a Darwinian, right? You determine when we were single-celled organisms, when dinosaurs existed, and everything in between, representing up until modern day, that it's all measured by one man. So that's irrefutable proof that on some level, whether consciously or unconsciously, we firmly believe and subscribe to the ideology that, you know what, God isn't polarizing, God isn't divisive, God is the one thing that has consistently not just unified all of humanity since the beginning of time, but has unified us since before we even existed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think religion is divisive. God calls everybody. God says, I do not want any of you to perish. God says, I love you. To the atheist and to the prophet, God says, I know the plans that I have for your life. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. That is the core message of who and what God is. God is our Genesis, no pun intended. God is the single unifying force that we have. God is the single unifying force that we have to call us to be better, to do better, to support each other, to love each other, to have, like the apostle said, faith, hope, and love, a love that covers a multitude of sins.
I love what you said there, as particularly about reading the same book and yet you miss it. Mm-hmm. And the children of Israel are largely guilty of that when it comes to the inclusiveness that God intended for all mankind to be saved. Now, all you have to do is look at the book of Isaiah. There are a number of references you can go to in the Old Covenant where God is making it clear He wants everyone saved. How do you, as a rabbi, how do you, as a learned man of the Torah, miss that? But it was missed. And I think partly and largely because of discrimination and prejudice, and it was done with intentionality, partly, or maybe even largely. But it's right there. It's right there. And to this day, it's still believed that it's only meant for the children of Israel. It's not inclusive. Thank God for the Messianic Jews. Anyway, that being said, it's missed. It's right there in front of us, and yet man goes on doing his own thing, marching to the beat of his own drum. That's not God's drum you're dancing to. I'll tell you that right now. Yes. Anyway, Mark, great.
The way you're dressed, right?
Yeah. So, but Mark, well answered. I appreciate your response there. how would you, and let me go to you, Melody, on this one. How would you compare faith? Because we're talking about religion and faith, and I think that was a great answer that Mark gave. And then added to that, you look at Christianity in 2023, the modern Christian, and then you go back to the beginning of the new covenant at the risen Christ now has left a directive for the apostles, the disciples to promulgate the gospel of Jesus Christ. How would you compare the faith of the apostles, particularly in the book of Acts, with today's modern Christian in 2023?
And that is a powerful question, because I look at the apostles from the book of Acts as diehard, dedicated, loyal, to the death followers. We all know the apostles died horrific deaths.
Yes, they did.
Right?
They did.
It's hard to find that in modern day. The question you had was basically American Christians, because of the environment of distractions and cancel culture.
Yeah.
And also it was once said to us that Americans or Christians feel that their public faith or their private faith is publicly irrelevant. Let's just take a look at that, right?
How about that?
And that hit me hard, because and this is transparency. We're putting together this mastermind called True North that we had to delay because it was such an interesting market, Maurice, that this is specifically coming from originally the 7 mountains of influence to bring all this together and have leaders speak to people. And we were having a challenge which has never existed in our industry before, of putting people in the same room. In the meantime, here's the rise up of the new age, society, preaching the same message we have, just re-engineering it to more to the flesh,
plagiarizing scripture,
right?
Yes.
And they were packing the Madison Square Garden, packing auditoriums, packing different state to state, and we couldn't get one Christian to commit, even if we're bringing in world leaders. So we had to scale back and say, all right, Father, there must be a different blueprint. But going back to the point of your question.
If I can interject
Yes,
just for
please,
1
go right
second,
ahead.
that it stopped being about bringing in the average Christian. Then God made the directive clear. This is just a convergence of world leaders who have the access, who have the wisdom, who have the influence, who have the ability to immediately mobilize resources to actually enact change. And of course, who have the courage to take the call.
Yes.
And such a time like never before, such a time as this, Maurice, we have more false prophets. There's more wolves in sheep's clothing.
The feel-good gospel.
Right, the feel-good, but they're not sending, hey, we're in the times of revelations. Get your life right with Christ. All we're getting down is, there's a lot of churches I've visited, right, of water good, feel good, mega churches. Let's have a concert. There's more 45 minutes spent in praise and worship before you get to the heart of the sermon. And then the heart of the sermon isn't even the heart of the sermon.
Is that what you call praise and worship?
But that is
like
what they're calling. It's a rock concert.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I grew up and they have taken "Come as You Are" completely out of context. Do you remember when Jesus was so upset because the temple had a lot of basically business going on, and he started gambling and he started overturning?
Yes.
There was a standard for worship. But now you look like you rolled out of the club, you're dressed in jeans, all of this rolling into church. People are no longer kneeling down in prayer. Where you look at the apostles, you look at Moses, when they entered holy ground and consecrated, their faces were on the ground, because that is the level of reverence, right, that they have for God, they have for Jesus Christ. So I'm even sending this out to the pastors that could be tuned into your show. What standards have you set in church that had started tolerating the lack of reverence in prayer?
Yes.
Aren't you kneeling down unless you're physically incapable of, right? We have Christians in other nations that is not the United States that has the freedom of religion, freedom to pray, freedom to express themselves, that are literally dying and being hung publicly for just even praying, kneeling down. So it is embarrassing when I take a look at this, because these are the things we have to be accountable to God for, right? Where has reverence and holiness start escaping church? When did we start tolerating what is more comfortable for men than the standards that God has preset?
Watered down the message.
Right? It's watered down messages. It's a lot of loud music. What happened to good old, why are there no longer Bibles in churches? Because I remember, I'm pretty sure you can testify to this, Maurice. When you walked into church, there was a Bible and there was a church hymnal.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And now, when you walk into churches, majority don't have the Bible. They're flashing things on screen. Got it, right? But how do you even know that what the scripture is going on screen, unless because it says that in the Bible, we're all going to be accountable to our own, faith walk.
Yeah.
So, so people are now going down to watered down services, big rock concerts masked as church. What happened to good old gospel music, right? That if you even look at the lyrics, put your soul straight with Christ, because it changes your demeanor, right? So when you answer that question, the breakdown of family is also proponent to the breakdown of church. It's the emptying of church. It's no longer high risk COVID. I understand why the churches had to close. I understand why there had to be spacing, whatever it was in 2020. But now it paved the way for people not even filling churches anymore.
Yeah.
Think about it.
My wife and I were at a church recently, and I like to wear suits, guys. I like to dap up. You know what I mean? And
yes.
I like to do my thing with the suit. Anyway, I went in, and everybody else was dressed like you were describing. Like they just rolled off of jeans. Even the pastors got on a shirt with the buttons undone and Converse sneakers, and people are looking at me like, "Who died?"
Right.
Christ for you.
Christ for you.
Like, Jesus? I think Jesus died or something. I think there was some mention about an empty tomb. Anyway,
and if that is your best, if the best that you can afford, if the best that you have, because our whole goal is to give God whatever version of our best is, and that varies from person to person. If for you that's Converse and that's jeans, then that's your best. But here's an analogy that I can paint for people. If you were going to meet your favorite celebrity, or if you were invited to a gala where there were going to be dignitaries, members of parliament, and world leaders, would you wear Converse and jeans and a shirt with the buttons all messed up, or a t-shirt? No, you want to look your absolute best.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that we would prefer to look our best for an actor or for a politician or even for our wedding than to have a direct audience with the creator of the heavens and the earth.
You look at the way the disciples left here. Peter said, "Hang me upside down. I'm not worthy to be hung right side up." And he was, by the way, it was an honor. Philip, they put on a high cross. They raised him up really, really high, not knowing they were giving more honor. Andrew, they crucified in an X.
Mm-hmm.
Bartholomew was flayed and executed.
Mm-hmm.
And they tried to kill John and couldn't. They tried to burn him in a vat of oil and he wouldn't burn.
Yeah.
And they exiled him to the island of Patmos. Thomas, they speared to death, doubting Thomas. And I could go on and on and on. What I'm saying is, and they were happy to die for Christ. As gruesome as all of this is, they were happy to do it. Mm-hmm. And that kind of intentionality you just don't see in America. And I can't speak for other places around the world, because other places around the world are literally putting their lives on the line out there around us. But I'm talking about America. America's free for a reason. It's not just because we're special. Oh, I'm I'm me after all. Of course. No. That's not why we're free. And we have a job to do. Guys, I'm going to have to stop right there. I thank you for being on the show. We're going to have part 2.
Absolutely.
For sure.
We did not
Maybe
get
part
everything done here. In fact, I'll throw it out if you're available. We'll talk about it later. Maybe Thursday at the same time.
You got it.
You
got it.
You got it.
You got it.
It's a date,
We
sir.
only got halfway through this. So great conversation. I love it. And for all those that are out there that came in late, you can watch the replay on Facebook or YouTube. Also, you can listen to this in its entirety on Spotify, where all major podcasts are heard. That would be RadioCast, Pocket Cast, Apple Music, Amazon, also Google Podcasts, Apple Pod, you name it. We are there. And also we're going to try to make this happen in a couple of weeks. KCHF TV 11 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, every Saturday morning at 12 a.m. And then again, they like us so much, at 8 p.m., you can watch the Maurice Brown Show. So
what's not to like? What's not to love?
So well, hey, man, you got to love it. Absolutely. And we're going to try to get you guys up there in a couple of weeks. I think Dr. Roberts, we're going to try to schedule for this Saturday, but this is part 1. We got to come back for part 2. We barely got through our entire interview. We had an hour slated for today. We're going to have to step out. I love the convo, guys. So let's do that. Let's get back next this Thursday at the same time at 2 p.m. and we will continue.
We are committed, sir.
And in the meantime, may the peace of Christ be with you and your families, guys. God bless you.
Amen.